It was early 2000s, and many were still recovering after the attacks of 9/11. A nation was at the brink of depression, but somehow still hopeful for a brighter future ahead. During this time, several music bands were making their debuts. Bands like The Strokes, The Killers, White Stripes, and many others. Interpol was one of those bands, and after releasing several EPs between 1998 and 2001, the band signed with Matador Records and released their self-titled EP on June 2002. And on August 2002, they released their debut album, Turn on the Bright Lights. The sound of the album was quite similar to the sounds of the 80s and 70s post-punk bands such as Joy Division, The Smiths, and The Chameleons. Interpol was, and for most people still, is one of the most influential post-punk revival bands that emerged from New York. Although their follow-up albums were also mostly well received and some not so much, none of them was able to beat their debut. This is a deep dive on Turn on the Bright Lights and understand how is it still regarded as the band's best album and still manages to be relevant. Interpol was formed in 1998 in New York by the guitarist Daniel Kessler and the band's former drummer, Greg Drudy. Kessler later met Carlos Dengler at a philosophy class and asked him to join the band and play bass guitar. One day, Kessler ran into Paul Banks, which he already met in France, and recruited him as the vocalist. After some time, Drudy left the band to pursue a career with his other band, Hot Cross, and was replaced with Sam Fogarino. By the time they started playing more gigs and became more recognizable, they still didn't have a name. They considered the names such as Los Abras and the French letters, and eventually decided to name the band Interpol. In an early interview, Kessler said Paul and Carlos weren't looking to be in a band at all. Paul was a songwriter and into his own thing, and Carlos had kinda given up playing music. But after several rehearsals, the band finally was ready to play gigs at the local pubs and clubs, and the rest is history. After a mildly successful EP got the band some more recognition, they went back to the studio and a couple of months later, they made their debut with an LP titled Turn on the Bright Lights. The album was quite influential for several bands like The Killers, The Excess, She Wants Revenge, and others. Kessler said in an interview that the opener track for the album, Untitled, was especially written to be played at the beginning of their concerts. That also explains why is it named Untitled, as it is a 4-minute instrumental with only 4 lines of lyrics. 3 of the songs from their EP called PDA, NYC, and Specialist was also included in this album. The album was critically acclaimed with many sites and magazines giving it above than average scores. Michael Chemi of the Austin Chronicle cited melodic Peter Hook-like bass lines, the divine shoegazer textures of My Bloody Valentine and Right, a peppy, Strokes-like bounce, and a singer who is a dead ringer for Ian Curtis. With its melancholic, emotional melodies and equally melancholic and spiritual lyrics of Banks, and with its gritty post-punk feels, the album was definitely something else, something special. The title of the album can also be heard in their song NYC. The song is about the city of New York post 9/11. It has a dark, gritty tone like every other song in the album, but no matter what happens, the singer knows the city will always care about him and will always have his back. The song Obstacle One is still the band's most popular song. It was written by Paul Banks and Carlos Dengler. The two wrote the song after they saw a news report about the suicide of a famous model. The song was named Obstacle One because, well, Banks didn't care about the titles. Obstacle One was a working title for the song, and since many of their friends liked the name, they decided to keep it. Another example to this can be seen in the closing track of the album, Leif Erikson, which is also my personal favorite. Although the song was named after him, the lyrics have no connection to the Icelandic explorer. It is about two lovers discovering a new territory where their interpretation of love is different from each other, but still want to be in a mature relationship where they can learn from each other and grow together. It's like learning a new language as we catch up on my mind. The song Obstacle 2 was about lead singer Paul Banks expressing his appreciation for a girl and letting her know that he's willing to change for her. And the song PDA was about a breakup, where the singer appearing conflicted between love and hatred for his ex, with PDA standing for public display of affection, which could relate to his anger when he sees her with another guy. So, to sum up, Turn on the Bright Lights was a masterpiece made by a group of college friends. For teenagers and young adults who feel depressed and hopeless at times to show that they are not alone. And even if you discover it recently or have been listening to it for years, it is certain that you will feel some level of intimacy to the album. And don't be surprised if you find yourself keep returning to listen to it. That's the magic of Turn on the Bright Lights. Thanks for watching, and this is Moody.